Hey everybody, it's Aldo Gandhi, and I just want to let you know really quickly that our swag shop is reopened. DeepDishTees.com is where you go, and that's tees with T-E-E-S. Clever name, guys. They're the new home of our merchandise. You can get t-shirts, you can get caps, you can get coffee mugs, you can get hoodies, you can get all sorts of good stuff, and you'll help out the bar room with the purchase. So head over to DeepDishTees.com.
You're listening to the Ballroom Network. The following program is intended for all audiences. Welcome to the South Burbs Hitmen podcast with your hosts, Joe Mandel, Steven Zim Zimmerman, Vinnie Parisi, and Chris Gonzalez. We're bringing you the White Sox coverage you need from the perspective of true Southsiders. Grab your Comiskey dog with an ice-cold beer and meet us in section 155. Everyone get on your feet for your 2021 South Burbs Hitmen.
That ball hit deep. Way back. You can put it on the board. Yes. Jimenez in the air. Left field. He's your hero tonight. Thanks, Cubs. Over the head of Jenks. Uribe charges, throws, out! And the White Sox have won the World Series. Alexei! Yes! 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 History! A perfect game by Mark Burley, and what an unbelievable play by Dwayne White.
First pitch starts now. What's going on, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the South Burbs Hitmen podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mandel, and I'm joined by my White Sox brothers in arms. I'm talking about Chris Gonzalez and Vinnie Parisi. Gentlemen, how you doing? How was your 4th of July? And what's going on with the Sox tonight? Vinny, I'll let you start.
Yeah, 4th of July was pretty good, other than the outcome of the White Sox game, even though they made it close at the end. But, it was sunny, it was hot. The great tasting, less filling Miller Lite was flowing. And, just a good old day, kind of hanging outside, watching some fireworks.
Amen, man. Yeah, there weren't too many fireworks coming from our White Sox, unfortunately. Tough end to the weekend. We started with a sweep of Minnesota, then we go 1-2 against the Tigers, and then we come out flat tonight against the Minnesota Twins. Chris Gonzalez, first off, how are you? And secondly, what's going on with the Sox towards the tail end of this weekend?
Well, first and foremost, I had a pretty great 4th of July weekend. I'll tell you what I really enjoyed seeing this past weekend was the call-ups of Sheets and Berger. They were really hot, and all it started was a couple base hits, and next thing you know, they were hitting some, getting some productions with some runners that, with some ribbies and runs of themselves. I just really love seeing our guys starting to come back, getting healthy. As for the longest time, we've had half the team playing, and now we're 6 games leading the division. Very not something that we're used to, being in first place at this point of the season. Definitely going as what we thought would be expected, but with how the injuries have happened, I think we'd be pretty crazy to think that we'd be in this position right now. But under Tony's guidance and next man up mentality, we are, like I said, above 6 games, leading the division, and that's something that you love to see. And also Kopech coming back. Forgot Kopech and Fryer are up, and they're going to be important on our run here. So we got to see how we finish before the break here and see where we're at.
Yeah, we're starting to get healthy. I think that's a beautiful thing. This team has to continue to trend in that direction. We do have a great call out here, a great question here in the chat from Travis. You mentioned Sheets and Berger, Gonzo. Travis wants to know, what do we think of Gavin Sheets and Jake Berger so far? For me personally, I'm very impressed with both of them, specifically their eye at the plate. But Vinny, I'll let you do a little bit more diagnostic there. What do you think so far about Sheets and Berger?
Yeah, they've both impressed me big time. I actually kind of thought they would both struggle a little bit when they first got called up. I mean, that happens to a lot of players who are a lot higher touted early in their prospect careers than Jake Berger and Gavin Sheets were. But that just goes to show what long-term development, to a less degree Berger, but for Gavin Sheets especially,
Sure.
development in AAA can really help some guys. And when you're crushing 300 at the with the Charlotte Knights and you're going along, when you get called up to majors, you might hit the ground running. It's not like they played 40 games there and then got their call up because we know how much talent they have. Those guys worked to get where they are. And going into the season, the prospects that we talked about were Madrigal and Vaughn and Kopech and even Garrett Crochet and even to a lesser degree Jared Kelly, who's now the number one guy after all those guys graduated. No one was necessarily thinking that Berger and Sheets would be making an impact at the same time, especially by 4th of July. So the fact that they were each able to come in, Sheets already has a couple home runs. He's producing RBIs. Berger's yet to hit the home run, but he's got a double, a triple, a couple singles. And they just look comfortable at the plate, which I think is the most important thing. Even if you're not hitting, 320 yet, or you're never going to hit 320 really, but you get what I mean. Like, as long as you look comfortable at the plate, that's what's the biggest key.
Absolutely, man. And I think the easiest way for me to sum up how much I like these two are that I ended up picking both of them up in fantasy because I'm that desperate. And it's paid off this week. So it worked in my favor. So I'm a fan of Gavin Sheets and Jake Berger so far. Gonzo, before we move on, thoughts on Sheets and Berger?
Well, Vinny said you can't hit 328 coming up as a rookie, but I guess the Yerminator had to say otherwise. But we did see the Yerminator batting, 400 going for that first month, and then came back to earth. It looked like he got ahead of himself mentally. I mean, you start seeing he had all the bling to himself by the month, and next thing you know, he's chasing pitchers way out of his zone. He didn't make that adaptation that you need to make in the big leagues, and let's hope that when Berger and Sheets continue to have the success like they've had, been making so far, hopefully they do make that adaptation when the time comes where the league is starting to figure them out. I tell you what, though, Hahn can't, as a GM, you can't rely on these two to have the success for the rest of the year. You have to, which I believe he is. I'm sure he's on the phone trying to get those lucrative deals at the deadline coming up. But you can't rely on these rookies to carry the team, along the way. You should make some moves now, just in case when they do falter, that you have those veteran bats ready that can take us where we need to go while we wait for Eloy and Robert to come here shortly.
No doubt, brother. And we will be getting into that momentarily. We got a question from Lauro in the chat saying, do you stand pat? Or are you trying to get a guy like Frazier or Escobar? Just momentarily, and just after we hit one more thing, we're going to do a segment called WWRHD. What would Rick Hahn do? So stay tuned for that coming up here in just a few minutes. But before we do, I want to highlight an excellent comment in the chat from Santiago, our buddy. Had me giggling. I know Vinny and I were laughing. If you could see us on camera, we're laughing. Santiago says, Cubs are so bad that one of the hosts on the other show before this one, the Friendly Confines, he didn't even show up. So props to you for that funny comment, Santiago. But technically, if we're being fair, one of our hosts couldn't make it tonight either, and Steven Zimmerman having some technological issues, but he will probably return in the near future for us. So Zim, shout out to you, brother. We miss you, man. But anyway, funny comment, Santiago. And we'll just keep on chugging along in our opening touch base notes here. But real quick, guys, I want to touch quickly on some of these all-stars here for the White Sox. On the offensive side of the ball, the voting didn't quite come through. But it's not really a surprise given some of the other guys that these players were up against, guys like Vlad Guerrero Jr. and I'm forgetting who else won it. A catcher was the only one that I was a little shocked that Grandal didn't make the cut. But pitching-wise, what's that?
Salvador Perez, I believe, won, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Salvador Perez, but then somebody else made it over Grandal, too, in the American League.
Zanino.
Yeah, I was surprised Zanino made it over Grandal, but... It's It's all about votes at the end of the day, and it is what it is. Given the batting average, I guess it's not a huge shock because people don't look past that. But we can look to our pitchers that had great representation. Of course, Carlos Rodon. You have Lance Lynn and Liam Hendricks, all representing the White Sox. You could argue that two of them can potentially make the case to start this game. So, Vinny, I'm going to pose that to you first. Do either Lance Lynn or Carlos Rodon start the All-Star game for the American League?
Yeah, it's between them and I want to say, did Gibson from the Texas Rangers make it? Because
I believe Gibson made it. Yes, I'd have to double check.
It's going to be one of those three, I would assume, if Cash does the right thing, because it's not like he has Glasnow to choose from or anything like that. That's probably who would start had he not gotten hurt. But I would start, if I were looking for a good story and trying to get things off to, I would go with Rodon. I know Lance Lynn has a slightly better ERA and he's more of a power pitcher, a little more exciting at times. But I think it'd be cool to see Carlos Rodon start the All-Star game. So that would be my pick if I were in charge. Even from an unbiased standpoint, I truly believe that.
Yeah, I have no problem going either way, but I could definitely see that being kind of a rags to riches kind of story.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, you can make a movie about it, and someone probably will at some point. Let's be honest. It's the stuff of Hollywood. Sometimes it's unbelievable. So furthermore, Liam Hendricks also made the cut to be one of the All-Stars for the White Sox. He's got a high amount of saves. I mean, his slider has been devastating at points throughout the year, but he has not been as lights out as people were expecting. Gonzo, obviously we're biased. We're White Sox fans, but did Liam Hendricks deserve to be in the All-Star game?
I think he deserves it a lot more than Aroldis Chapman does. So I guess you can say yes to that. I mean, not even just going off this year alone. I mean, he's proven it over the past several years. He's the best closer in the game. So yeah, Liam absolutely deserves it. I think he leaves the AL in saves as well at the moment. So even if we were biased, I mean that in itself, and this is stats driven. So stats driven by the fans voting. So yeah, I mean, there's no reason why Liam shouldn't make the All-Star game in the voting. And I'm glad the fans vote, or not the fans, but the rest of the AL committee, got him in there. In fact, I wish you kind of wish Kopech didn't get injured, because you think he might have been able to have a shot himself if he kept up with the stats that he was putting out there before injury. And I think he would have a shot even to make it too. So we'll have to see, how Cash decides to start, on the mound, Rodon or Lynn. I mean, I don't think he will put Cole out with how he's been performing lately. Plus, I'm sure that as a Rays manager, he's not too fine of the Yankees rotation. So
probably not.
You would think, I would say Lynn would probably be the best shot if it was my guess. But yeah,
I think it's between those two guys. I really do. I think it's between Lynch and Rodon. I would hope that they would go with one of those two. I know I'm a Sox fan, but we're all a little bit biased. Every Gibson is a worthy starter as well. So I mean, it's pretty crazy that there's only a small amount of guys that could potentially start here. I mean, you're definitely going to see them all pitch in this game. I was very surprised by Seattle's. I can't even say it right, but Kikichi, the lefty that we saw Joe at or Vin, you were there too for opening night. I mean, he was good in that performance, but overall in the season, I wasn't really surprised by him. I know his ERA is up there. He's got a high. He's really high with his K ratio right now, but I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised by him, so I was kind of shocked a little bit by as far as AL pitchers go that made it. I was surprised by him.
I could see Shohei Ohtani making it as the starting pitcher as well, because if you put him in the starting lineup and the starting pitcher, I know that would create drama and it would be a huge story. First ever to make it, one of each position. So
he's definitely going to be the first ever to play both positions in the game. Whether or not how much we see of him pitching, I'm assuming it would be one inning or less, but I'm assuming it would just be 1 inning. But either way, it's going to be some fun stuff to watch. I'm looking forward to the All-Star game. But with that said, gentlemen, let's quickly move on to our last opening bit here. And we mentioned it, we teased it before. What would Rick Hahn do? WWRHD. There's a lot of trade winds blowing. There's a lot of rumors flying around, and out of nowhere, a rumor comes up that the White Sox are interested in Trevor Story and acquiring him and moving him to second base. So this is the part of the show where we're gonna say what we would do. Are we going to acquire Story? If I was Rick Hahn, are we going to go change gears? I know our buddy in the chat room earlier, our buddy Lauro. Let me find it right here. Do you stand pat, or do you still try to get a guy like Adam Frazier or Eduardo Escobar? I mean, these are tons of great questions. Kind of gets the mind thinking. The White Sox have a lot of things they can do. They've got a lot of trade chips here. Vinny, I'm going to let you go first. If you were Rick Hahn, how do you improve this White Sox team? And is Trevor Story part of that equation? Is it story time?
Story time would be a good time, no doubt about it. He's one of the best players in the league. But it depends on what they give up for him, because they traded Arenado for a bag of pucks and baseballs. So, if they can get something along those lines, that would be great. I don't think you should sell the farm for a guy like Trevor Story, just because I believe what you're going to get back later on in terms of your own guys that are coming back from injury, you can get that type of production without giving up a single thing. So would I be cool with giving up a mid-level prospect for a Frazier or Escobar? I'd probably be a little more for Frazier. Yeah, I'd be fine with that. But to go for someone like Trevor Story, you better win the World Series. Because if you're adding Eloy, Robert, and Story to the lineup, you better go win the World Series, because you're going to be giving up a lot to get a guy like that. And so basically what I'm saying is, would I do that? No. But if they did, I would just get so excited at the same time. So it's one of those things that it's hard to predict it's hard to say what you would do, because Trevor Story is a great player. So
he is a great player. So let me ask you this, Vinny, before we move on to Gonzo. Who is your ideal target for this team right now? If you're Rick Hahn.
If I were Rick Hahn, I would just try my best to pay the least you can for a guy like Escobar. Fill in second base, bring back Robert and Jimenez when they're healthy, and then you have a starting lineup 1 through 9 of above average to highly above average players at every single position. And then you got guys like Sheets and Berger and Mendick, and maybe even when there's an expanded roster, someone like Mercedes. All those guys coming back could really push this team to have some quality depth, where you really only need like a starting second baseman for as minimal as possible.
Yeah. Personally, I think Eduardo Escobar would be a great fit on this team, and he's that kind of guy that you're talking about. I mean, but then again, the rumors are now that Eduardo Escobar is just, they're asking exceptionally a large amount for him. I'm not sure how real those rumors are, but you imagine that price is going to fall at some point, especially with all these talks. And I think some of these leaks are intentional by the Reinsdorf family, saying, "Oh, we're looking at Trevor Story. Oh, we're looking at Adam Frazier, but really we want Eduardo Escobar. So lower your price and we'll come to you." I think he'd fit in great, and I think we need a reliever. I think we need one reliever. You mentioned a guy like Craig Kimbrell. I wouldn't have a problem adding him. I know he's kind of one of those risky guys right now, right? And we have our closer. We're not acquiring Kimbrell to be our closer, guys. Let's be honest. He'd be a guy that would probably take what? Vinny, what do you think? I'd say probably the 7th or 8th inning, depending on how far we are along in the games. Or am I crazy there? Or is he a guy that you think would be a kind of an 8th inning guy?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having Kimbrell at all, because you could use him as 8th or 9th. Like, why does it matter? He's shown this season that he can be dominant whenever he wants. He's probably been right there with Hendricks for the best closer in baseball this season. It's weird having both Chicago teams be like that dominant in the ninth inning. But I would say you don't have to use Hendricks every single closing situation either. Like, guys can have rest.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be multiple playoff games in a row where, well, we hope that every game's tense. Every game is a 1-run game, a 2-run game, even a 3-run game. Like, you need a dominant closer. If you can have two, that'd be awesome. The Michael Kopech, Garrett Crochet thing makes things interesting because if you have them paired together, so let's say the starter, Lance Lynn, Giolito, whoever, go 6 innings. In 7 and 8, Michael Kopech or Garrett Crochet, and then in 9, either Kimbrel or Hendricks. Or you could do the Bummer, Kimbrel, Hendricks trio. You know, there are so many different ways you could go about it if you acquire a reliever like Kimbrel, even though he's technically a closer. It's more important that he's a quality bullpen arm.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, I mean, but getting back to my move, and I agree with you, Vinny, is I think you get a guy like Escobar, and then you get a closer, you get not a closer, a reliever like Kimbrel, and I think those are the two guys that I would be targeting. I mean, I don't think I don't want to sell the farm for Story either. You know, I don't want to sell the farm for Frazier. I like Frazier, but we haven't seen enough out of him, at least personally. I think Escobar is the kind of guy that you've seen what you're going to get out of him. 260, he's going to have power, and he's going to hit for RBI. I'm fine with that, and I think that gets us where we need to be. We have so much help coming back. Eloy's close. He keeps teasing it. He's getting closer. Robert's cleared to participate. Don't go crazy acquiring an outfielder. I personally don't think that needs to be a priority. So that's, if I'm Rick Hahn, that's what I'm doing. I know the guy below me has a totally different opinion, so I'm going to toss it to Chris Gonzalez, because if he was Rick Hahn, he would do totally different things than Vinny and I just talked about. Chris Gonzalez, why don't you tell us what those things are?
Yeah, well, so for the most part, just so we're all clear, Travis, everyone in the chat, all the names that we've been hearing a lot of names giving away the farm. The farm's not going to be necessary as the value decreases as we get closer to the trade deadline, because everything that we've heard on Twitter is all June value, all these big names. So as far as priority goes, I'm looking for right field first. Now, I believe the most amount of prospects you'll have to give up will probably be for like Adam Frazier, because let's say like Chris Bryant, you can throw him out there, which I would be on the phone with the Cubs right away, but I don't think Bryant's going to cost as much as Frazier would just because of the rental and the situation. And Chuck had a podcast about that a month ago too, and he was talking about closer to the deadline, not when the podcast came out. And there's a lot of deals in recent history you can go look to see what was given up for these big names that are on rental deals at the deadline. JD Martinez, Nick Castellanos of recent memory, they're right there. You can see how much prospects were given away, and you'll be surprised, because I definitely was surprised when I was listening to Chuck, and I forgot what MLB insider was with him on that podcast, but it was pretty eye-opening. But yeah, Adam Frazier, that's either him or Bryant. That would be my key deadline accusation. But I would also, when you're also at the deadline, your GM, you have to know that relief arms are pretty cheap as well. And I would complete a reliever and a second baseman, and Escobar is going to, I know the value for Escobar was high because it's June value when he's being talked about, but as the deadline approaches in July, that's going to go down pretty quick. So Escobar would be my second baseman that I would go and get. But for relievers wise, there's three relievers you should keep an eye on. Graveman in Seattle, that'd be a really key right-hander to go after. But if you're going to make an Escobar deal, might as well get Soria in that deal. And Soria has been with the White Sox recently. And let's just face it, the A's got him last year, and they're a great team that gets value for their buck. So Soria would be a key, package in that deal that I would love to get. Or you can go to Detroit and get Soto, but he's also an all-star this year, so that is going to be a little bit more pricey and he's under control too. So that would be a little bit pricier. But so if it was me, I would get Escobar, Soria, and a package deal, and that would take away the second baseman, the right-handed reliever for the bullpen, and then focus on that key position in right field, either Frazier or Bryant. That would be what I would be looking at if it was me.
Absolutely, Gonzo. Appreciate it, man. And it sounds like this team's needs may be changing. We do have some breaking news. Yasmani Grandal has been hurt badly in tonight's game. Vinny, I don't know if you got to see it or not, but I know it's kind of all over Twitter. If you have gotten to see it or heard about it, can you speak a little bit to what has happened?
Yeah, Grandal's in big trouble. It looked like he took a check swing. I got the game on. I was able to see the whole thing. You might even noticed I was kind of looking back and forth at the TV while I was talking like 5 minutes ago. It looked pretty bad. He was like on the ground rolling around. And, we've seen that lead up to not being too bad, like Moncada, like he's back. But he was rolling around on the ground, punching it a little bit. It looked like when he took a check swing, something in his hamstring or the back of his thigh, like it just looked like something moved the wrong way. So, they can win the division if he's out for a while, but it's getting pretty bad. It's almost like borderline weird what's going on with the White Sox this season in terms of injuries.
I mean, you'd have to imagine Mercedes would have to come back up and catch potentially, right? Or the emergency catcher. I don't know if you guys caught this from the game the other day. Danny Mendick is the emergency catcher for the White Sox. So that would be something to see. But obviously not good news coming from I lost my mind for a second where we were playing today, coming from Minnesota. So hopefully Yasmani can pull out of it. But breaking bad news. This team just can't catch a break. Hopefully it's nothing more than being out for a few days. If you're going to get hurt, mildly bad, the time is to get hurt before the All-Star break. So maybe he has some time to rest. Maybe he's going to be okay. This is all speculation at this point. But prayers up to Yasmani for sure. Nothing like ending a segment with terrible, terrible news. And the chat room just absolutely as stunned as we are. Man, and Lauro mentioning more injuries. Mike Trout had this calf injury as well. It wasn't good for him either. Yeah, I know. So for those of you who don't know, yeah, thanks, Lauro. Appreciate that. But those of you who don't know, Trout is on the 60-day IL. I want to say IL. So let's hope that's not the case here. Speculation at this point, but we'll find out more probably tonight/tomorrow. And before we move on, I just wanted to call out a quick quote that came out from Lance Lynn. I know we've been talking about our hopes for Lance Lynn to retain to his contract for the White Sox to sign him on a deal. He came out with this comment today. The South Side has a tendency to be a little bit more of a home feeling for me than any other place I've played. If you're the White Sox, you got to go out and make an extension. I mean, this is him crying for it, I would imagine. You guys got to get it done. Gonzo, can you see this getting done pretty quickly now, that especially after a comment like this?
Gosh, for me, it would already be done if I was a GM. I would already have him extended. And he'd probably be the only one out of the three possibilities that at this point I would have already had extended, because the other two are Giolito and Rodon that you'd have to consider right now. Giolito hasn't proven it to me yet, and I'm glad that they didn't give him the extension going into this year. And same with Rodon. He hasn't proven it over a full season yet, and can he do it this season? Great, but he's at that point. I would just move on from him, no matter how this year is going to go. That's just money saved for elsewhere on this roster. But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised Lance Lynn hasn't been extended. Hopefully he does, because he's been. And I know Joe, you've highlighted my preaching on Lynn going into this year, and I'd only imagine that would continue if he is resigned for the next year or two.
And I've said it many times in this show. If they re-sign Lance Lynn, I'm buying a Lance Lynn jersey. And I think the three of us would probably all do the same thing, because Lance Lynn is the South Side. I mean, this guy is the epitome of a White Sox fan, and I love it. So sign him up, get him in. I'm all about it. But guys, we are going to take a quick commercial break before we get to the rest of the segments in the show. So we will be right back after this word from Peggy Kaczynski.
Hey guys, it's Peggy Kaczynski. I retired early from my 20-something career as a sportscaster covering the Bulls, the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Cubs, the White Sox, and really every other college and high school team in Chicago. So what do you do after that? Well, you start a podcast. That's what I did with my teenage son, Jason. And the result is The Sportscaster and Her Son. Yes, I'm the baby boomer, a mom. We don't get along. We don't have a lot in common, but we both share a love for sports. And we always have great sports conversation. Even better, our guests in the interviews. So come check us out. We're on Podbean and the Barroom Network, or really wherever you get your audio. The Sportscaster and Her Son podcast. See you there.
And we are back to South Burbs Hitmen after that quick commercial break. Gentlemen, we are going to get into the nitty-gritty now, and we're going to talk a little bit about our buddy Tony La Russa and what we like to call La Russa's Locker. Yeah, so usually we break down some decision-making by Tony, and there's one thing that we were talking about pre-show that kind of came into mind for us, and Vinny kind of brought it to my memory. He's like, Lance Lynn throws 117 pitches, but last week La Russa doesn't let Keuchel finish the ninth. So, gentlemen, and Vinny, since you had the first thoughts on this, I'll let you go to it here. What does this mean about Tony's relationship with Keuchel? And two, is this going to be the norm with Lance Lynn? They're just going to let him do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, I certainly don't think they're going to let him do whatever the hell he wants, because even Tony, when the whole Yermin Mercedes thing was going down, he's like, Lance has a locker, I have an office. Like, right. we know he will show no hesitation towards Lance Lynn in terms of reprimanding him or making him do whatever he wants. He's Tony. But I do think there is a certain respect that Tony has for Lance Lynn opposed to every other pitcher, where he almost takes his word for it in terms of his ability to stay in the game and whatnot. And he hasn't necessarily maybe developed that with Dallas Keuchel yet. But, that game that Dallas Keuchel was in, it was the ninth inning, and he wanted Liam to come in and lock the door. And who's to say that wouldn't be the case for Lance if he was coming in to save a doubleheader and pitched 6 innings, but it was actually innings 6 through 8, like whatever, or 3 through 8. What, you know what I mean? Math is hard. I just think Lynn has a longer leash. Like, the scouting report coming in on him going into the season was, this guy wants the ball. He wants to throw 100 pitches every start. And the thing people forget when they go to criticize Tony, and no one likes to make fun of decisions that he's made so far this season more than me, even though they've been fewer and farther between in terms of being bad lately. But Lynn only pitched like 30 pitches the start before. It was that rain out. It was against the Mariners where he had a perfect game through 2 or whatever it was. And I just think Lynn was a little more fresh. He had not used anything from the tank the game before, essentially 2 starts removed, threw 117 pitches. Keuchel hasn't had the same sort of success this season. His ERA is almost double. So it's hard to go against Tony for that at all. I'm actually on Tony's side when it comes to the debate between Lynn and Keuchel getting that long leash so far this season.
Absolutely, brother. I'm on board with you there. I just think it's a great conversation. Curious to see the dynamic between the manager and these players. Chris Gonzalez, are you reading any more into it than we are? As someone who is an umpire, obviously for younger ages, but still as an umpire, you probably have a different perspective. I'm curious what your thoughts are here.
No, I mean, well, on umpire side, all you want is a pitcher throwing, pitching strikes and making everything close in your zone. And for the most part, look at, Lynn's accolades, past couple of years, he's just eating innings, about 200 innings, past couple of years. And that just tells you he's doing his job. And that, especially with a, coach like Tony just coming in right off of the Hall of Fame bench. And it's just amazing that he can rely on someone that he has past familiarity with, and a guy that's been in Cy Young competition the past couple of, seasons. And that's just amazing that the Sox got to really sign him and can rely on him. I mean, I would absolutely have faith in, like Vinny said, he had a little pitch count that start before, so that just helped, save his energy up for a situation that he didn't know, that he was going to be in that situation, pitching that, that high of a pitch count, but I'm sure it helped him with the rest that he had. But Keuchel, doubleheader and situation in doubleheader, that was his third time going into the lineup. And I know he had, two lefties, I think, and to go against if he were to complete, going out there for the ninth. And normally you might like that matchup, but I wouldn't trust it since it is the third time going through the lineup. And I know the three of us didn't agree, or we agreed that, to put Hendricks in and not let Keuchel go out there, but also for the fact that Keuchel hasn't been himself lately. He's been struggling. I don't think he's been struggling because of sticky stuff. I think he's just been struggling recently with his pitches, but with his pitch control. But hopefully he figures that out, because it's kind of crazy that we had Giolito and Keuchel last year having amazing performances in the shortened season. And then right now they're the last two of our rotation that are really struggling at the moment. So. Yeah, we have all the faith in Lynn. Keuchel needs to step it up, like, the guy that to back up his words, because words are nothing right now if you're not performing to him.
Yeah.
So he's got to figure it out. And when he does figure it out, then Tony can rely on him. And hopefully that's soon, because we're going to need him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're definitely going to need him and both of those guys. One thing, the next thing I want to get into in this segment, before we get to our next one, is, did Yasmani Grandal get rushed back too soon? We do have some footage of the injury here, Vinny, so I'll let you speak to your thoughts on if you think he's been rushed back too soon. And as we do that, let me pull up this footage and let's take a look at the injury. So take it away, my friend.
Vinny muted.
Vinny, you are on mute, my friend.
That's my fault.
There it goes. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's an issue with him playing today. He was off all weekend. It didn't appear that he had any injuries. There were no doctors telling him not to come back, and they desperately need him. So it's hard for me to say that Tony should have let him sit. I'm not going to rip on him for that. I did read a tweet from Dan Hayes of MLB.com. He covers the Twins. Or not MLB.com, it's The Athletic. He covers the Twins for The Athletic.
Mm-hmm.
And he tweeted that he sat in the dugout for a while and then walked off without any help to the clubhouse. There's a chance that it could have just been a leg cramp. It was 94 degrees at first pitch. So I'm not a doctor, even though sometimes I play one on the internet. And
I think we all do.
And I'm hoping that Mr. Hayes is correct here. It looked, I've had a Charlie horse and wanted to punch a hole in the wall when I felt it. And he kind of hobbles around like he's got one going on there too. So you just wonder if it's something serious. He's obviously not going to return to this game. Collins finished that at bat and ended up striking out. and he's in the catch as we speak. So this is starting to feel like a lost game that they're playing right now. But it sucks to see Grandal go down like that. We just hope he's okay.
Yeah, and Gonzo, after seeing the footage of this injury, I know you didn't get to see it until just now. What are your thoughts on it, and does it look serious to you?
I mean, when you're struggling with hamstring soreness or tightness or whatever they clarified it as, and you have to understand how important Grandal is to this roster going down the stretch here. I get that we only have 6 games left until the All-Star break with a 6-game lead in the division, how you might want to throw him in there right away, but I kind of go back and forth on it because I would rather him, sit that week and rest and then bring him in fresh after the All-Star break. I know that's something that was kind of talked about with Abreu going to last weekend with him battling, all the soreness that he had to be battling at the time going to that weekend versus Detroit. And Moncada had to sit out too a little bit. So I if it was me personally, I would hate for him like tomorrow if he ends up on a 10-day or DL or something. Let's say, it isn't something where it is a cramp. That could be pretty frowned upon, I'd imagine, when we look on Sox Twitter tomorrow and it's just blowing up because of that. But yeah, I would rather cause we need him down the stretch, and what I'm getting at here is I would rather them bring up let Collins get his fair share of starts as a full-time guy, and then bring up Savalo, let him get a couple reps. And then bring Grandal back after the break. That's how I would have probably went around it.
And as me seeing this injury, I saw it for the first time about 5 minutes ago. And I'm going to describe it for everyone that's listening to the podcast version who can't see it right now. Yasmani's, up to bat, and he takes a swing at a pitch. Actually it's a check swing, and he kind of gimps off on, what is that, his left leg? I'm trying to look at it. And then he's kind of like writhing in pain on the ground. So for me, it doesn't look like a season ender. I could be wrong. I hope I'm not just jinxing every power from the baseball gods right now. But it doesn't look like a season ender, especially with the report that he walked into the clubhouse, whether or not that's accurate or not. But I believe it to be according to what Vinny had to say. But personally, if that's the case, and he's going to be out for a little bit, like you said, let him rest and come back full strength. I feel like maybe he didn't have to play in this series. But again, he's swinging a hot stick. I can understand why. So I don't really fault La Russa too much for putting him in here. But I think the real question, guys, here is conditioning with this team. Is the training staff doing what they have to do? Because even if it is a cramp, guys, this is a multi-million-dollar athlete. I mean, there's been so many injuries, hamstring, lower body injuries. It's getting old real quick, and I know it's across all of baseball and not just with the White Sox. But Vinny, is this something that the team should look into, or is it just a baseball thing given the current atmosphere of the world?
Well, it's absolutely something they should look into, because I've even heard Rick Hahn say it. Like, of course we're trying to figure it out. Why? I mean, you'd be a foolish organization not to try and figure out why.
Absolutely.
Steve Stone seems to believe that the short season has a lot to do with it, and only playing 60 games in 68 days or whatever it was last season. That was probably not ideal, and I don't think any of us would take back them doing it. But at the same time, it seems like the league is kind of dealing with the repercussions from that right now because of the fact that injuries are so steady this season, where like I want to say at the start of June, they were like 200 ahead of the average, 200 individual injuries ahead of the average, which is just absolutely insane. So
that's insane.
It's hard for me to just rip on the White Sox training staff. I know a lot of Sox Twitter and people in the group chats and all that want to blame them right away. It's hard for me to do that personally, just because I know what other teams are doing and how they're suffering from injuries as well. I mean, no team in the league has gone without it so far this season. So it sucks. I hope Yaz is okay. I've been pretty pessimistic every single time someone went down so far this season. After I got to see him walk back to the dugout, I saw the video. It's hard for me to just assume that this is going to be anything too long. This team needs the All-Star break like it needs air.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's an important note that you're bringing up, Vinny, is that injuries as a whole are on the rise. It's not just the White Sox. The reason it feels so different to us is it's impact players.
Yes.
You see a lot of teams losing utility guys, random bullpen guys. For us, it's like the key players, and I think that's why it's amplified to a million. It's unfortunate, but the fact that this team is still winning with all this stuff happening, it shows that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully this Yaz injury is a minor thing in terms of that. With that said, boys, let's move on. Let's talk about someone that stunk up the place. We all know what this segment is. It's one of our favorites, and it's Vinny's favorite player of all time. Just kidding. It's the Adam Dud of the week.
You suck.
You suck. Suck.
Stupid. Lousy. No excuse.
What a dud. What a total dud.
Yeah, so there's a few guys that stunk it up this week. There's a handful we can choose from, but I think Dallas Keuchel and Lucas Giolito might be towards the top of that heap. Chris Gonzalez, I know your nominee was Keuchel. I'll let you go first to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah, it's hard to decide between the two because they were pretty lousy last week. On my end of it, I'm gonna have to go with Keuchel because at least Gito had a pretty decent. He had a quality start and a win earlier that week, so I'm gonna go with Keuchel for last week for his lackadaisical performance. I mean, you're just hanging the sinker and just not a lot of movement on his pitches, and he got banged up in Detroit. Just lousy pitch selection as well. I don't know, again, what his personal catcher was in that game. I forgot, but it was just a rough start. And you're hoping that your pitchers can get you wins when you're facing, a team like Detroit and on the road, because you got to win on the road. And I was talking to Vinny before, on the pre-show of the road woos right now. That's kind of worrying me. And Keuchel, he needs to do better. And hopefully he can pick it up. I believe his next start is in Baltimore this week, if I remember right, but we'll get to that in the Sox Weekly. But Dallas Keuchel is my Adam Dud of the week.
Yeah, I'm going to follow that up. I'm going to go with Keuchel too. I mean, this is just a guy that, I don't know, the body language isn't there for me. And I know the guy's a competitor. Maybe there's something else going on. Maybe it's just a couple bad weeks. Maybe I'm reading too deep into it. But when I see Dallas Keuchel play right now, he doesn't look like the guy that we saw at the beginning of the season. Now, I don't know if it's fatigue. I don't know if it's injury. There's a million things it could be. It could be just a little funk. But like I said, he's not where he needs to be right now. The All-Star break coming at a perfect time for him. Hopefully he can take a few days, get himself together, and come back and be the kid Keuchel that we know coming out of the All-Star break. So I'm going to go with Dallas. Vinny, who is your Adam Dud of the week?
He does have a new pitching coach too, so maybe that could be playing in effect what Katz is trying to do with them for the first time that they have that connection. So we'll have to really see as he goes here. But yep, go ahead, Vinny.
Yeah, if I may, I'm going to take it in a different direction.
Let's go for it. Do it.
I'm not going to pick a player. I'm going to pick, as a whole, Major League Baseball umpiring has been absolutely atrocious. But I'm going to zone in on our good friend Tom Hallion, or Hallion, however you say it, I'm not sure. He was behind the plate on Saturday during the day game. He allowed the Detroit Tigers to get another run, which basically took all the steam out of the Chicago White Sox lineup. They were all mad. Ethan Katz got ejected for saying like 3 words. Tom Hallion You called 78% of strikes correctly. Let me re-say that again. 78% of called strikes correctly. That is a disgusting disgrace. 53 out of
bad.
68 strikes were made correctly. His outside zone accuracy was actually okay. He called 111 of 116 true balls correctly. But there were two specifically where Ryan Burr made a beautiful pitch in the top of the strike zone, and it was ball 4. One of them loaded the bases. One of them walked in a run. They had the whole plate, not just a chunk of the strike zone. They each had the whole plate. And then there was a ball that was egregiously called the ball when it was a 1-0 count. That's considered one of the highlights of the highlights of his bad day. I have this from umpire scorecards, by the way, for those wondering. You could check out their Twitter handle. You could get a grade on basically every single umpire who calls a game throughout the week and the day. He gave the Detroit Tigers 0.42 runs. That is extremely high for those who study umpiring like the way I do. Detroit actually ended up with plus 108 runs total in the game because of the bad umpiring by Mr. Tom. And yes, it ended up being 11-5. The game got away from the White Sox, but I'm here to say that I truly believe the White Sox would have had a much better chance to come back and win that game had it only been 6-5 going into the 7th inning rather than 11-5. That 5th inning was a disaster for the White Sox, and it would have been over. You give any Major League Baseball team extra outs, and the game is not going to go your way. And that includes the Detroit Tigers. I don't care what their record is. Major League Baseball has a serious problem. Everyone's calling for robot umpires. We'll see. I would like to know what your guys' take on that is. I know, Gonzo, you're an umpire and you don't want to be replaced. But, I mean, something's got to give here. These guys got to start being held accountable. That was a disgusting disgrace. 78%. Get out of here with that. We would all be fired if we did our job at 78% correctly all the time. I was disgusted. Normally, a bad umpiring, a missed call, I'll, maybe make a funny tweet making fun of the guy, and then I'll be over it. I'm still not over that to this day. That is so annoying.
Yeah, and as you can see here, Vinny, I've pulled up the tweet. Of course, the handle is at Ump Scorecards. Absolutely great stuff that they throw out there every single week. And I can zoom in a little bit if people want to take a quick look at it. But it gives you all the breakdown of everything. And then the big number right here, inside zone accuracy, 78%. 53 out of 68 called correctly. So that's rough, beyond rough. And definitely our Adam Dud of the week.
And throwing out Ethan Katz for saying that wasn't high. That's all he said. That wasn't high. And then Tony La Russa comes out and really probably one of the only animated Tony La Russas we've seen in terms of discussion with an umpire. But I mean, come on, dude. You have to be better than that. You have to be better than that.
And speaking of folks who were better than that, these are the players that really put it on the board this week.
Way back! He looks up! You can put it on the board! Yes!
Yeah, so there was quite a few guys that were really swinging a hot stick this week. One of them just got hurt, and Yasmani Grandal. You can just go across the board. There's a bunch of them here. Abreu, Sheets is swinging a hot stick since coming up. Grandal, Tim Anderson. These are all nominees for the Put It on the Board Player of the Week. Vinny, who for you is the red hot player on this Sox team?
Yeah, you mentioned those four, and those are the ones that we have kind of highlighted on our notes here. But I'm going to actually throw another one out there that I think deserves some recognition, and that's Leury Garcia.
Absolutely.
He has been very good for the last 2 weeks, and he's driving in runs. He's hitting home runs. He hit a home run in Detroit. I forget exactly which day it was. I believe it was that Saturday game where they ended up getting pumped and the umpire was involved. He hit it where the big boys hit it. Like, you see a guy like Abreu or Moncada hit stuff like that. So, I don't know. I think Leury Garcia, with his driving and runs, he just drove in a couple right now. It's now 6-3 because of a single he hit with men in scoring position. So, I mean, I like seeing him succeed because the White Sox need him with all the injuries they've had this season. And it gives you confidence for when he goes back to being a utility bench guy.
That's you couldn't have said it any better, Vinny. I mean, this is a guy that is flying under the radar, and he even flew under the radar in my notes. But Garcia has been, a worthy presence in this dugout, and I really do think that he's going to turn things on here because, I mean, that's what Lurie does. He's streaky, and it looks like he's getting hot now. So I love it, absolutely love it. And then, I totally lost my train of thought here. But I wanted to say, you mentioned before that we went live tonight that by the time this game is over, the White Sox will come back and win it. They're on their way now, 6-3. I believe it's the 7th inning now. So hold on to your bootstraps because this is going to be a wild finish. Looking forward to that. But yeah, totally agree with you, Vinny, about Lurie Garcia, and hopefully that continues. Chris Gonzalez. Who is your put it on the board player of the week?
My put it on the board player of the week is going to be Jose Abreu. He had a rough 2 weeks of a key part of our schedule in June when we needed him for production to spark this offense, and we didn't get it, and made us worrisome with Houston and Seattle and those series. And now they picked it up right before the All-Star break. Hopefully he continues to rake in these 2 series this week, for the break. But Jose Abreu, he just went off, and he was my pick to click last week, and we'll get to that here shortly. But he absolutely raked, and hopefully that continues this week so we can win, these next 2 series and expand that division lead beyond 6. Because the further we get, the more comfort that we have as we continue to go into the trading deadline and then after, and then hopefully, like we said earlier, that Eloy and Jimenez come back in August, and the schedule looks pretty promising too at the end of the year too. So, and this would be a great series this week to put the needle in the coffin, or whatever you want to say, to Minnesota.
Stick a fork in them.
Stick a fork in them. Yep, that's what we need right now, because we don't want them to be coming back. Because I'm not scared of Cleveland right now, and they're the only ones I would be kind of worried about, because all they I know.
Yes, sir.
Vinny mentioned it last week that all they need really is some pitching, and they would be probably pretty solid right about now. But Jose Abreu,
for sure,
he's the man that we need, and he's our MVP, and he is now starting to rake. And might be a week too soon because of the All-Star voting. I would love to see him in there. But I'm glad that he's starting to turn it around.
Absolutely, man. That's a great pick for this week. And I'm going to do a little bit of a cop-out, but it's the truth. I want to go with some of the big 4. I'm going to list with the big 4 this week, and they're all going to be my put on the board players of the week. And that big 4 is being, of course, Yasmani Grandal, Jose Abreu, Moncada, and Tim Anderson. These guys all hit over 325 for the week. I know that Moncada only had 7 at-bats, but still he had some really good at-bats before he went down. And, I mean, look at this. Look at these stats. Unbelievable. Grandal hit 333, 5 for 15 last week before the injury, 7 ribbies, 2 home runs, 5 runs scored and a walk. Gonzo had with Jose Abreu was his pick to click last week. We'll get to that here momentarily. But Abreu hit 348 with 8 ribbies, 2 homers, 9 runs, and 3 walks. Tim Anderson over 300, 9 for 28, 328, 2 ribbies, and 5 runs. Moncada even had 3 hits in his 7 at-bats, 429 with 2 runs scored. The core is really turning things around, and they're getting it done. So I know it's a bit of a cop-out, but it's the truth. When these guys are getting it done, you're generally going to see wins. And you didn't see it this weekend because you had some of those injuries there with Moncada and Grandal down. But I think if these guys are healthy, that's the way we're going to trend. So those are my put it on the board players of the week. And it's time to go to pick the clips here shortly. Well, Gonzo, did you have one thing you want to touch on real quick? I know we're getting towards the tail end of the show here.
Yeah, could you actually put Chubb's comment back up on the screen? Because
yeah, absolutely.
I wasn't actually expecting that one, and it was a good one. It was the longer one that he put up there before that one. Yes, there we go. And I could be wrong, but this computer-generated strike zone, I'm not sure if it's the same one that's used in that Twitter reference one that Vinny pays attention, because I pay attention to that same resource as well on Twitter to see the ump reports. But I'm not sure if that's the same computer-generated one that they use, like what you see on the TV broadcasting as well. But I want to get back to this because it was very good comment here by Chubbs. Over this past series, during that game that was going on that Vinny brought up, Stephen Benietti told us how that computer-generated strike zone is generated, and it's generated through the last 50 at-bats of each player. And that kind of drives me nuts because that's to the player, but that's not to the – every strike zone is going to be different on the umpire, the home plate umpire. It's his own zone. So when you put up a computer-generated strike zone on the screen, that is not that guy's zone whatsoever. And
Sure.
it drives me nuts because you see Benietti always harp on what is given to him by the broadcast. And he thinks that, anything close to those generated strike zones is, well, he believes that, computer-generated strike zone is the zone of that game when it's not. And you also have to factor in that there is a large percentage of very young umpires that just got into the league. I believe in the shortened season is when they threw them into the mix. So they're very relatively young in their careers in the MLB, still getting used to strike zones in the MLB. And let's face it, these are the best pitchers in the whole world. And this is the best stuff that they have to see and craft in that skill. Because most of their careers get into the big leagues and the Asian leagues, and the talent over in the Asian leagues isn't similar to MLB. So these guys still have to adjust. I mean, we've been so, I guess you can say, privileged to get the zone. Our veteran guys that we're accustomed to seeing over the this past decade or two. So it's going to take some time for these younger guys to get accustomed to their zone, So I would love it if these computer-generated zones weren't in the broadcasting spectrum at all. That way we wouldn't be so head over toes over, what we see with these, charts, charts that we see.
I get you. I just think the future is going to highlight these kind of things. I don't necessarily think it's the greatest thing for the sport, but that's the way that we are trending, and I think it's probably a bigger conversation for another show. But I will agree that it's being focused on a little bit too much, in my opinion.
If you're going to take the human part of our game, then the game's going to be played by robots. Like, that's really all I have to say about removing the human element part of the game.
Yep, I get it. And I don't want to go too far off the tracks because I know how big of a conversation this could be. I know Vinny's got opinions. I got opinions. We could definitely do that in an upcoming show, but I don't want to go too far off track. I do want to point out Yoan Moncada with a 2-run triple. Sox only trail by 1, 6-5 in the top of the 7th. Vinny, the comeback's on. You talked about it. Here it comes, hopefully. And with that said, guys, let's get to our pick to click section of the show. We're wrapping up. We're getting towards the tail end, but let's take a look at our picks to click choices from last week. I got them scrolling across the bottom. I had Yasmani Grandal, as we talked about. He had a great week, 333, 7 ribbies, 2 homers. Gonzo had Jose Abreu, who went 8 for 23, 350, just about 8 ribbies, 2 homers, 9 runs scored. Vinny had Moncada, who had a red-hot start, and then he got hurt, but now he's back tonight, and he's picking right back up where he left off. And Zim had Tim Anderson, who had a great weekend himself, but just not as good as everyone else, going 9 for 28, 328, 2 ribbies, and 5 runs scored. So with that said, congratulations, Gonzo. You have won yet another. You're getting back on the win column for your pick to click. So here's our updated scoreboard. You have 7 wins. Zim has 2. I have 5, and Vinny's hanging out in the basement. But Vinny hasn't been here for the full season. He's going to dig himself out. I feel it. I thought for sure you were going to win this week when he was on fire to start the week. But this is your week to shine, Vinny. So let's get to it. We usually let our winner pick the first choice. So Chris Gonzalez, who are you choosing for your pick to click for this week?
I was going to choose Cease with his 2 starts this week, but I was kind of worried about at least tonight's matchup versus Baltimore later in the week with the hot Minnesota on the road. So I ran away from him, and I'm going to go jump on the train again and go with the MVP of Jose Abreu. So Jose Abreu.
Ooh, I like it, man. He's swinging a hot bat. Let's go with that again. Ride the chugga chugga choo choo. I went to go type it in, and I completely butchered it with my typing skills. So, congratulations to me for that. I spoke to our buddy Zim earlier, and Zim gave me his pick to click. He's going to go with Andrew Vaughn. He said because of his track record against Minnesota. I kind of like where his head's at, so that could work out in his favor. Vinny, I'm going to let you go next and make your pick. Who are you going to go with?
I don't like taking people in back-to-back weeks. I just don't. But I got screwed out of Moncada last week. He was on fire. He was batting 400 on the week. And then sliding in the third, he scraped his hand up a little bit, and they let him rest against Detroit. And so if he plays against Detroit, maybe the series goes differently. At least one of the games, maybe. Maybe they have that extra run in the Sunday game. And I just want to win one fairly. So I'm going to take Moncada just because of the fact that I had him last week. He got hurt. I might have won had he played. We'll go with Moncada.
Dude, I like it. You're backing up your guy, man. That's what you got to do. It's the fun stuff. And that leaves me to go last but not least. And I'm feeling good about this one. I'm going to go a little bit outside of the box, but not too far. I am going to go with Gavin Sheets for my pick to click for the week. Swinging a hot stick. I think he's going to continue that heading up to the All-Star break. You have 2 teams that aren't great pitching-wise by any means. So I'm going to go with Gavin Sheets for my pick to click. So quick little recap here. I'm going with Gavin Sheets. Our buddy Zim's taking Andrew Vaughn, Gonzo, Jose Abreu. And Vinny, not me. Vinny is going with Yoan Moncada. So definitely going to be a fun week. We're going to see what happens there. And we'll bring it on back in and check on it again next week. We got a comment in the chat here. Someone talking here about the Charlotte Knights. Evening, gents. The Knights need more talent on the roster. I'm tired of constantly dropping games. Well, there could definitely be some new names coming depending on what these trade packages are, but I can't imagine we're going to trade a lot of trade for minor but we need major league talent. Let's put it that way, boys. And I know Vinny and Gonzo and I agree. But I think we all speak for each other when we say we'd love to check out a Knights game. I know they had a Luis Robert bobblehead the other day that I'd love to get my hands on. I collect bobbleheads, if you couldn't tell. So anyway, I just wanted to get that comment in there because we gotta mention our Charlotte Knights here.
Well, for Alex, I would also add on to that. Keep your eye later in the season because you might see a name like Jared Kelly or Cespedes come up to Charlotte at the end of the year possibly, and those two would be interesting to keep your eye on as they make their way through our system.
And you got Mercedes. Gavin Sheets and Jake Berger are gone, but Mercedes is back. Yep. So it's hard for me, who's so invested in the major league team, to even slightly care about wins and losses when it comes to the minor league teams. First and foremost, for me, it's just the individual development of players. So when I see Gavin Sheets hitting 320 and Jake Berger with 15 bombs, it doesn't matter to me personally if the Charlotte Knights win or not. I understand that there are some hardcore, dedicated minor league fans, and I respect those people. But for me, it's like, yeah, give me the prospects hitting 300 and let's bring them up to the majors, even if it depletes the Knights' chances of winning. I care about the White Sox chances of winning first and foremost right now. But there's plenty on the way, and the draft is coming up. I doubt any of those guys will see AAA time this season. But the Charlotte Knights, the White Sox organization as a whole is well-stocked and going to continue to get better.
Yeah, Cespedes is going to be fun to watch from what I've seen. He'll be coming soon, and he brings a lot of power. Alex says what stinks about being down here is I'm in Charlotte, but unable to catch any White Sox games. Yeah, totally feel you.
Oh yeah,
Alex, and we feel for you, and hopefully some of these great names we mentioned, like Cespedes and Jared Kelly, will be fun for you to go out and watch, because I promise you those guys are going to be the real deal. So coming soon to a field near you down in Charlotte. But had to mention our friend Alex here talking about the Knights. We love our Knights down there as well, and we'll catch a game soon enough. But let's get into talking about the week that is in White Sox Weekly. Yeah, we're going to hit this quick and get out of here relatively soon, but let's talk about the week coming up and the pitching matchups. Gonzo and Vinny, I'll let you guys speak to it. Gonzo, if you want to talk about the first matchup, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here real quick, and I should take our show notes off there. There we go. Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming matchup. Let's talk a little bit. Well, obviously right now we've got Cease going in this game, but talk a little bit about tomorrow.
Yeah, so just so everyone's aware, Sox are continuing their road trip, and they got 3 games Monday through Wednesday in Minnesota, and then 3 games Friday through Sunday in Baltimore. But as you guys can see, as a pitching matchup tonight is Cease and Ober, and we saw this last week, and it was kind of similar how tonight's going. But Cease did have a really great outing last week. This week he gets banged up a little bit, but as far as the score goes, it's pretty similar to last week at the moment. Sox did win that game, so hopefully we can pull in from behind tonight. It looks like tonight Cease got banged up early on, but he settled down, and that is good to see. Your matchup tomorrow, Rodon and Berrios. You guys remember if it was Rodon versus Berrios last week? I can't remember with the doubleheader how that turned up again, but surprisingly,
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, surprisingly, Berrios, our rookies banged him up last week, and that was great to see. I mean, he didn't get settled in that matchup like he normally does versus us, and we banged him up, and I love to see that because he's a hell of a Sox killer usually in his normal, when he's on his game. But for me, that's going to be the game of the series in Minnesota, because that third game is going to be Happ and Lynn, likely Happ and Lynn. Well, we'll see if Happ, that will end up the pitcher for Minnesota in that game, because we love those lefties, and we definitely bang on Happ every time we see him. And Lance Lynn, the workhorse that he is. Gosh, you just love to see him end the series, and hopefully with the W, and we can win those series. Crossing my fingers, knock on wood. But as we go to Detroit, I haven't seen, I'm sure nothing has
Baltimore.
Or sorry, not Detroit. I was thinking last week already. This week in Baltimore, I haven't seen too much of Baltimore's pitchers, at least projected yet. From what I saw, though, Giolito is going to be on the mound in that first, or not Giolito, Keuchel. Keuchel's going to be on the mound in that first game, maybe versus Lopez. I'd love to see him bounce back versus Baltimore, get his confidence going for his rest in the All-Star break. But we're going to need Keuchel coming out of that break, because we're going to be facing Houston, and we're going to need all of our pitchers on their toes going into that series for the second half of the season. But the second game is going to be Giolito, possibly versus Eichelman is his name. We'll see if that actually ends up being true. And then the last game would be the second start with Cease on the week. And I haven't seen any projected pitchers for that game. So Baltimore series is going to be interesting, because I have no clue some of these young guys that they have, and haven't seen them before. So, I mean, you'd love to see, Means, but he's injured. So Baltimore can't tell you too much on their pitching staff, and hopefully that benefits a sweep for us, hopefully. But hitters wise, Cruz had a really great week last week after that Sox series, and he moved up his stats to 306 average, 18 home runs, 45 ribbies. And then for Baltimore, Trey Mancini, who we talked about earlier in the season, he's back from injury and he's still raking. He's 254, 15 home runs, and 53 ribbies. So keep an eye on Trey Mancini. And then I'll give it over to you guys to talk about the rest.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And we're actually towards the tail end of our show. We're going to do one fun, lighthearted thing before we get out of here. And, of course, that's what's Vinny got? Vinny's got something.
I just want to say one thing. It does line up perfectly where Lynn and Rodon will get their starts in against the Minnesota Twins tomorrow and the following day. And then that's it before the All-Star break. So both of them will be fresh enough to each go an inning in the All-Star game if called upon.
Yeah, I think that's an important note, too, because there's a lot of guys that their schedule doesn't quite fall that way, and it works for both of them. So Great call out, Vinny. And, of course, make sure if you guys aren't following Vinny on Twitter, follow him and Southside Showdown. And I mean, Vinny is everywhere. And make sure you follow him. You'll see everything on his Twitter. That's the best place to see all of the above. So make sure you're giving Vinny a follow. So don't forget to do that. But before we get out of here, we wanted to do one lighthearted thing and talk a little bit about the 4th of July. So everyone, has their fun memories. They blow up fireworks. They grill out. They drink beer. But at the end of the day, the 4th of July is about who you spend it with, right? So, we're going to talk a little bit about our favorite memory for the 4th of July. And then we're going to hightail it out of here. And hopefully there's some more fireworks down there in Minnesota. But that's foreshadowing. We'll come back to this later and either laugh at me or be like, hey, Joe was doing something pretty good there. But we'll find out sooner or later. But Chris Gonzalez, favorite 4th of July memory. And, what was it?
Yeah, normally for 4th of July, I have over the years, a family party with family friends and a whole lot of people. And I'm going to have to stick with those memories. But specifically, my favorite memory of those would be actually this year's. Because it was kind of a combination between a going away party for me and a master's celebration from when I earned my master's degree during the pandemic last spring. Never got to celebrate that really. I took pictures with a former professor of mine during the pandemic, but I didn't get to celebrate that with my family and friends. So we did that, this past weekend. And like you said, it's who you spend it with, and about 50 people showed up, and there were a lot of others invited, but a lot of people that were pretty busy working or otherwise. I was glad that I could see them after a couple of years of not seeing them, and cherish those memories, because we all know what it was like when we couldn't cherish them, and especially the going away part of it, because I probably won't get to see them for another couple of years. But I definitely had a great evening on the Saturday. We had it on Saturday the 3rd. But yeah, I absolutely loved my family and friends, and it was a great memory. So that was my past weekend and favorite memory.
Beautifully said, Gonzo. Absolutely beautifully said. Vinnie Parisi, favorite 4th of July memory?
I really don't have just one that sticks out. They all kind of blend together for me, because pretty much every year since I was a little kid, 4th of July was just spent at one of my 2 family members that have a pool. So they're basically just all one great 4th of July memory. It's pretty much with the same 30 to 50 people every year. I know it's kind of like a wide range, but people with families and whatnot, things change.
Sure.
But for the most part, it's been the same core of people. And, it's just, I remember there's one where I want to say it was Adam Engel robbed a home run and he jumped over the wall, or
oh yeah
4th of July game, if I remember correctly, and it was kind of his coming out party. That sticks out in terms of baseball memory. I'll give a shout out to one of my all-time favorite movies, The Sandlot. We all know the scene where some Ray Charles is playing and they play their night game under the lights, and Benny the Jet is the only one who's paying attention to the baseball game. I was Benny the Jet when I was a kid. Not saying I was good like him. I'm saying all I cared about was baseball. So
right.
Shout out to that in terms of the 4th of July culture. I would say 4th of July as a whole is just one big memory for me.
dude, it's a beautiful thing. It's the truth. And speaking of the Sandlot, I tweeted out earlier this week from the South Burbs Hitmen account. Not sure if anyone knows, but the Sandlot. Speaking of the Sandlot, it has been added to Disney Plus, as has the Sandlot 2, which I'm not gonna lie, I have not seen the sequel, but if you want to see it, both of them are up there on Disney Plus. So if you're into that, go check it out. I know The Sandlot's definitely one of my top sports films of all time, as you mentioned earlier this season on the show. For me, I love spending the 4th of July with family and friends, and that's the best part of it all. But I have one memory when I was probably in high school that just kind of sticks, and I don't know why. You guys are going to laugh and say it's immature and stupid, but it's kind of why it's funny. But you guys all know, not bottle rockets, but like those bigger firework rockets that you could actually put on the ground and you light it and they blast off. Well, some of my cousins were younger at the time and they had some toys that were kind of beat up. So we strapped some Barbies to those rockets, we blasted them off, and when the thing blew up, chunks of Barbie came flying out, and it was just really funny. I think we used some random action figures too. I can't even remember what it was. It was probably like Spider-Man or something. But
you guys are like Sid from Toy Story, just blowing up
basically
fireworks.
Yeah, that explains a lot. The toys are after me, especially after bringing this story back to light. But yeah, exactly. It was kind of like Sid from Toy Story, except those toys were. I guess Sid's toys were kind of beat up anyway. But anyway, that's just a memory that kind of sticks out when I think of the 4th of July, blowing up Barbies and action figures on rockets. So, and of course, drinking beer and grilling. Grilling's always fun. Can't go wrong with that. But with that said, guys, let's get to the quick shout-out portion. Then we're going to hightail out of here. I do want to remind all of our listeners, we got a great show planned for you next week on Monday, July 12th. It is the anniversary of Disco Demolition, and we have Jeff Schwartz, one of the masterminds behind the whole thing, joining us on the show. He's going to talk about the event and everything that went into it, everything that went wrong. He's the guy that says he knows everything. So Jeff Schwartz joining us next week to talk Disco Demolition. It's going to be absolutely incredible. I personally cannot wait for it. But with that said, guys, let's get the shout-outs. Chris Gonzalez, who you got?
First and foremost, going to shout out my family, my parents for their support, my girlfriend, and really everyone that also came up to that party that I just mentioned. As I did tell them about our show and tried to get some more viewers for us out of my family as well. And maybe I got a couple of them on, who knows, but I also want to shout out Chubbs in the chat for that comment that he had about the umpires. I appreciate that from Chubbs, as I know he's he has an old school perspective, as I see him a lot on the Mike North Advantage, talking about some old topics as well. And thank you, Chubbs, for joining us and being active in the chat as long as everyone else as well, as I saw Travis and others. Thank you all to participating in our chat and giving us some more to talk about. So those are my shout outs.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate it. Vinny, shout outs, my friend.
Well, as always, family, friends, parents, my brother Joey, make sure you tune into our shows. I'll give a special shout out to my cousin Nikki, because me and him are going to take home this bags tournament this weekend. We're going to record a vlog of the whole day. We're going to record a vlog of the whole day, and I'm going to make sure everyone at the bar room and all the listeners on Twitter, they're going to be able to see this thing. So we're coming for that trophy. I'm hoping that next Monday my shout out isn't the winner. That's not me. But next Monday, my shout out will be the winner, no matter who it is. So, Nick, we're coming for that trophy. Everyone else is screwed.
Dynamite, brother. And, for my shout outs, I, of course, shout out my wife and my dog Maverick every week. I love you guys. And then, I got to give two big shout outs here. One to our buddy Steven Zimmerman. Unfortunately, he had some mega computer issues and his computer got toasted. He wasn't able to join us tonight. But, Zim, we're thinking of you and we're hoping to have you back in the near future. Looking forward to talking Sox with you soon. And then I got to give a huge shout out to this guy, Chris Gonzalez. He's He's going away. He's got some great life things coming up. We can't talk about him on air because it's the essence of the world we live in. But we wish Chris nothing but the best. And this is how much of a class guy this is. He texted me today, asked me if I'm home. I'm not. But he goes, I'm going to drop off a gift. And I go out on my front porch, and I have a bag filled with autographed White Sox baseballs. Here's Octavio Dotel. And then most importantly of all, one of my favorite White Sox of all time, a signed Scott Pasednik bobblehead. So it's pretty sweet. Gonzo, a massive shout out to you, man. Wish nothing but the best for you in your next steps. And we don't know if we're going to be able to join us next week, but if you are, we're looking forward to it. And if you can't, we totally understand. But, with that said, of course, a shout out to my buddy Vinnie Parisi down there. It's been a great addition having you on the show and adding you to the lineup because it's a dream talking baseball with all four of you guys, with three, and I can't count myself in there. That's weird. I don't really talk with myself about baseball, but anyway, I'm just rambling along here. But I appreciate all you guys, and it's just so much fun doing it every single week. And, my shout out to my dad, too, who said, great show, guys. Thank you. And, yeah, absolutely. We love doing this every week. We couldn't do it without you guys, the listeners. We went way longer. We were going to go an hour. We ended up going almost an hour and a half. But we're going to get out of here. Hopefully the Sox can pull this comeback off. And we're talking Disco Demolition next week with the one and only Jeff Schwartz. Tune in tomorrow night for Dan and Aldo Bare Their Souls. Aaron Mikulski is going to join them. That's going to be a boatload of fun. Don't miss that. And check out all the other great shows on the Barroom Network, including our buddy Vinnie Parisi down there, talking hockey with Bar Down, and then Crosstown Crosstalk as well. The Mike North Advantage, the whole shebang. It's great stuff. Check it all out. With that said, for the South Burbs Hitmen, I am Joe Mandel. That guy down there is Vinnie Parisi, and this guy over here is Chris Gonzalez. We will see you guys next week. Go White Sox. Let's see what happens. Let's get some wins. See you guys next time.